So I'm looking for a tennis job. I've had so many interviews, and I really want to move out of my area, etc. And I think this is before I had my club, and I just kept running into these coaches. Like right before this interview, I did a phone interview with a guy in Georgia, and he specifically told me, which is good that he told me this, because he said, "Are you one of those guys? If you're one of those guys that just stands there and doesn't say anything." And doesn't coach or doesn't teach, he's like, it's not going to work. We just had someone come through. That's just that did that. It's just not going to work. And I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. That one was in like Peachtree City, Georgia, and so that ended that. And then right after I had this phone interview, and I think I got the phone interview because this guy, he was old school, and he knew. I think he was the coach that one of the coaches that I attended clinics with. He was old. He was more old school, and I think this guy knew him from back in the day or whatever. And that's why, because I openly said to this guy after a couple phone calls, I said, I'm not even going to come down. It was in North Carolina. It was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I said, I'm not even going to bother. I know I applied. At this stage, I had a lot of like indecision as well. Like, which way do I go? And I didn't really understand that. I didn't really have a choice. Like a lot of young people, I thought I had a choice. I didn't have a choice. I really should just went with the flow. But yeah, it was North Carolina. I was like, I'm not going to come. It's not going to work out. You're going to do the same thing that everyone else does. And he's like, no, you should come down. You should. And I think maybe this guy was. See, this is where I started to notice that a lot of these clubs, they had a harder time finding what they wanted. They were kind of picky. It was hard to find good people, which maybe I'll get more into this video and later in this video. But he's like convinced me. He's like you should come down for the day, etc. And I was like, okay. So he convinced me. I went down. It was like it's like a 6-hour drive. I spent the day there. I don't even think I stayed overnight. And beautiful facility, all clay courts, no indoor courts. And I went down there. I think it was in February, and the weather was beautiful that day. And he had me playing with somebody. He was like a 5-0 or whatever, one of his friends at the club. So I played this guy, and I think he was somewhat impressed by the way I played because I was sliding. And at this point, I was pretty good. I don't think I was as good as I am now, but I was pretty good. And then he had me do some clinics or do the afternoon clinic with the kids. And in the group, 3 of his boys were in this group. And I remember, I think this was the Matthew kid. I'm not really sure, but I think this was him. I remember I had the court spread out so I could pretty much have like 2 kids on a court. So I did that. I didn't have them in groups. I had them spread out. And I was encouraging this kid to hit drop shots, and he refused to do it. He had like a couple, and he missed them, and he just didn't want to. He didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't want to go outside of his comfort zone, and he was just being real stubborn about it. And then there was his younger brother. I was also trying to show him that I was good with 10 and unders, but this is a mistake I made. This guy didn't. We didn't really talk about it too much. I mean, he was kind of open to it, I think, but he wasn't really telling me the truth because his younger kid, who was like 9 years old, was playing yellow ball, and this kid was a beast. I don't know where. I forget where he went to college. It's somewhere in North Carolina, and I know Matthew Thomson went to Wake Forest, and then there's another boy who I think was the oldest. He was the best to deal with, but again, he was the oldest, probably the most mature. At the time, he was probably 14 or 15 maybe, and I think all of them went to school in North Carolina. And yeah, the middle boy, the 9-year-old, I was trying to convince this guy that he should be playing orange ball, and he was trying to convince me that he's not playing orange ball. This kid was like out there just banging, and he was super aggressive, and that was kind of maybe his personality. And I was trying to like convince him that, yeah, well, if you had a bunch of kids like him, this is my idealism coming in again. If you had a bunch of kids like him and they all played orange ball, it would be pretty good. And I think he was thinking like, well, we don't have a bunch of kids like him. It was a small country club, and he didn't say that, but I think that's what he was thinking. And then it just got worse and worse with me trying to convince this guy of this perfect world where all we had all these kids using the right ball and the right court, etc. And I think I just started to make him. It started to seem like I was telling him how it goes, and he's this big boss man director. And then at that point, after that clinic, I left, and I think I followed up with him, but I was kind of getting the hint that there's no way I was coming back. So it started well, and then towards the end, it just completely went to hell with that clinic. And I did another clinic with a ladies group, which I'm not going to really speak about, but that didn't go that well either. And if you watch this kid, if you watch him play, you could tell his dad is old school. It's like you get a lot of these people where they're old school, but then they try to act like they're into this new thing. And a lot of them will say like, well, this has been around forever, and it probably has. And what it is, they've experienced it and they've already rejected it. But because of where the industry's going, they kind of have to. They kind of have to go with it. They'll do the red ball, they'll do the orange ball, but they'll still teach old school. And that's kind of what this guy reminds me of. And and then especially when they have their own kids, they definitely won't use the balls and the smaller courts, etc. Because their kids are playing so much tennis, they're on the tennis court every day. They know it really doesn't matter in that case. I mean, maybe you could say that, but if you watch him play, you could see he's very very deliberately technique oriented. And I'm not going to get into what that means in this video if you don't know. But I don't remember him playing like that as a kid, obviously. But there had to be a period that he went through where they took time and they really nailed down exactly what the forehand's going to look like, exactly what the backhand's going to look like. And I'm going to do a video where I've literally formed this girl's technique in an hour, because that's all it takes. And then I left it alone from a deliberate standpoint. It looked 1 hour, that was it. And I'll get into that in that video. But you can tell that he really, at least I'm kind of guessing. I could be wrong. But it seems like there was a lot of time spent on getting everything in the perfect place, etc. Particularly on the forehand. Obviously the serve. You can really do it on the serve more than anything else, because it's a static position. It's more like golf. There's no movement involved. There's no other player involved, etc. So, and I want to throw this in here from a teaching or a club pro standpoint. This guy was not back to like them being picky. This guy was not looking for someone who quote unquote was an expert, etc. The guy that he had working down there was a 4.0, no higher than a 4.0. I wouldn't even really be interested in playing with this guy, like on a serious level. And he was running this club, and he was leaving to go somewhere else for some reason. And I was watching him giving a lesson, totally traditional. And this is what this guy wanted. I also talking to him. He didn't want any trouble. He didn't want troublemakers. So he had experienced troublemakers, and I guess that's what he perceived me as a troublemaker. They want, just like any other job, they want someone to do the job. It's not so much about the tennis. If you're 4.0, if you can do certain things, you're a good teacher, you're customer service oriented, then you're fit for the position. And it's also when I really started to think about money. I remember talking to this guy, and because I wasn't thinking about money. Again, not me, naive Angelo, not thinking about the money at all. And how this would even work, because I wouldn't even be getting paid enough to move down there. At least not at first. So this guy was talking about, I had a little conversation with him. He was talking about where you can make a lot more money, and I think that's why he was leaving. He was going to like an outdoor commercial club where you could get a lot of lessons and make a lot of money. I'll put these videos up on the screen, and I hope you enjoy this story. And thanks for watching.